May 1943, Vickers Armstrong Workshops, Newcastle. British engineers unveiled their solution to Germany's heavy armor. The gun was facing backwards, not slightly angled, completely backwards. Everyone who saw it thought there had been a mistake. There hadn't been. The Archer would prove itself as one of World War II's most lethal tank destroyers, earning respect from crews who initially doubted its bizarre configuration. Imagine witnessing this for the first time, a combat vehicle that appeared fundamentally wrong. Britain's most formidable anti-tank weapon jutted out over the engine compartment, aimed toward the rear instead of forward. When these machines rolled through English villages, civilians stopped in their tracks, certain the vehicle was moving in reverse. Military personnel attending initial demonstrations stood bewildered, struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. During early trials, first-time observers genuinely believed they were witnessing a catastrophic assembly error. Some thought perhaps inexperienced factory workers had somehow installed the main armament backwards. The reality was far more ingenious. The gun physically couldn't be mounted any other way, and this seeming design flaw would transform into the vehicle's most devastating tactical characteristic. The crisis emerged in 1942, when Germany unleashed Tiger heavy tanks across North African battlefields, rendering British anti-tank weapons inadequate. The 6-pounder gun that British forces relied upon could pierce approximately 90 millimeters of armor plate at 500 meters under optimal circumstances. Tiger tanks mounted 100 millimeters of frontal protection. At standard combat distances, 6-pounders frequently bounced off Tiger armor without effect. Desperate crews targeted the thinner side plates or closed to dangerously short ranges, hoping for penetrating hits. Field reports from Tunisian engagements documented entire anti-tank batteries failing to stop Tigers attacking head-on. The mental toll on British tank crews was severe, as they began regarding Tigers as practically indestructible when engaged frontally. The situation demanded immediate action. Britain developed the 17-pounder as their answer, a 76.2 millimeter masterpiece of weapons engineering. Using conventional ammunition, it punched through 150 millimeters of steel at 1,000 meters. When loaded with revolutionary armor-piercing discarding sabot projectiles, penetration soared to 233 millimeters, though these specialized rounds remained rare and offered reduced accuracy. This weapon could defeat every German armored vehicle in existence. Tigers, Panthers, even the thick frontal plates that had previously stopped all British fire. Success came with complications, though. The 17-pounder exceeded 2 tons in weight, with a barrel measuring over 4 meters in length. Recoil forces were tremendous. Britain faced the challenge of making this gun mobile for battlefield deployment, and time was running out. The logical approach involved fitting the weapon onto an existing tank platform. Churchill tanks were examined but proved too massive, and the gun installation presented insurmountable difficulties. Crusader tanks lacked sufficient size and engine power. Cromwell tanks required such extensive redesign that completion would take years. That modification program eventually produced the Challenger, but Britain couldn't afford the wait. Then engineers proposed the Valentine chassis. By 1942, the Valentine had become outdated as a main battle tank. British factories had manufactured over 8,000 during wartime production, exceeding any other British tank design. Vickers Armstrong facilities had mature, efficient production lines already operating. The chassis had proven reliable in combat conditions from North African deserts to the Eastern Front. Large numbers were readily available. One critical obstacle remained. The Valentine was physically too compact to accommodate the 17-pounder. Facing forward, Leslie Little and his engineering team at Vickers confronted what seemed an unsolvable problem. Conventional forward mounting would make the vehicle catastrophically nose-heavy. The front suspension components would fail under the excessive weight. The violent recoil in preliminary configurations sent the gun breech dangerously backward into the driver's position. Forward-facing installation simply wouldn't function. Little implemented a solution no other designer had attempted. He reversed the gun's orientation entirely. By positioning the 17-pounder facing rearward over the engine compartment, weight distribution balanced properly above the drive sprockets. The rear-mounted configuration made the design viable while keeping the driver ready for immediate movement after each shot. Existing Valentine production facilities required only minimal modifications. The finished vehicle accommodated 4 crew members: commander, gunner, loader, and driver. They occupied a cramped, open-topped fighting compartment stocked with 39 rounds of ammunition. Armor thickness varied from 14 to 60 millimeters depending on location, actually thinner than standard Valentines in certain areas to reduce weight. This machine was engineered for concealment and ambush, not armored slugging matches. A General Motors 6-cylinder diesel engine generated 192 brake horsepower, propelling the vehicle to 32 kilometers per hour on paved roads. The military establishment responded with skepticism. June 1943 trial evaluations cataloged numerous complaints. Artillery officers wanted a rotating turret instead of a fixed fighting compartment. They demanded greater gun depression, expanded traverse beyond the limited 11 degrees each direction that the Archer provided, increased ammunition capacity, and more spacious crew accommodations. The Archer delivered none of these requested features. Despite this, the War Ministry ordered 800 units, approximately 4 times the production run of the Challenger tank destroyer with its conventional forward-facing turret. Practical necessity triumphed over theoretical perfection. The Archer weighed merely 15.2 tons, roughly half the mass of America's M10 Wolverine. Standing just 2.24 meters tall, it possessed one of the lowest silhouettes of any vehicle mounting the 17-pounder. It could hide behind hedgerows, stone walls, and reverse slopes where larger tank destroyers would be immediately spotted. Production commenced at the Elswick Works in Newcastle, a sprawling complex extending 3 miles along Scotswood Road with over 18,000 workers devoted to military manufacturing. By war's conclusion, 655 Archers had been completed. The original contract specified 800, but Germany's surrender canceled the remaining orders. The Archer entered frontline service in October 1944. Officially classified as a self-propelled anti-tank gun rather than a tank destroyer, operated by Royal Artillery units instead of armored regiments. The first 13 vehicles reached the 21st Army Group in November. This represented a late-war introduction. The D-Day landings had already succeeded, the Normandy breakout was history, and the massive tank engagements in the Bocage had concluded. Yet the Archer would demonstrate its value during the final campaigns across the Rhine and deep into German territory. British tactical doctrine prescribed specific procedures exploiting the backwards-facing armament. Crews reversed their Archer into carefully selected firing positions, using natural terrain features to conceal that remarkably low profile. Then, they waited in ambush. When German armor entered their kill zone, the Archer fired. The 17-pounder delivered accuracy well beyond 1,000 meters, and trained crews could maintain 10 rounds per minute. Here the backwards design revealed its tactical brilliance. After firing, the driver simply accelerated forward. No turning maneuver required, no exposure of thin side armor during rotation. The vehicle that looked incorrectly assembled was perfectly engineered for shoot and scoot. Ambush warfare. German tank crews facing Archers often never understood what hit them. The muzzle flash originated from an unexpected direction, and the vehicle they searched for had vanished before they could rotate their turrets. Panzer commanders trained to identify enemy vehicles by distinctive silhouettes found themselves hunting a threat that matched nothing in their recognition manuals. According to veteran testimonies preserved by the Tank Museum, crews who initially ridiculed the design learned to appreciate it in combat. One field report noted the rear mounting proved advantageous since the vehicle required no turning to withdraw. Another observed the low profile made it ideal for ambush tactics. The Archer saw action during Operation Veritable in February 1945, the massive offensive to clear the Rhineland. Imperial War Museum photographs document Archers operating in flooded streets at Kranenburg on February 11th and supporting the assault on Gok on February 19th. The waterlogged conditions during this offensive actually favored the relatively lightweight Archer over heavier vehicles that became mired in mud. In Italy, Archers arrived during 1945 supporting the final spring offensive. The 7th Anti-Tank Regiment of the 2nd Polish Corps deployed them in the concluding Italian operations. The mountainous landscape and narrow roads suited the compact vehicle perfectly, where larger American tank destroyers struggled on hairpin curves. The Archer could position itself in locations the enemy never anticipated finding anti-tank guns. What could this backwards weapon actually destroy? According to Royal Armored Corps assessments, the 17-pounder could penetrate Tiger frontal armor at standard combat ranges. Against Panthers, period analysis indicated side armor was vulnerable at long range, potentially beyond 2,000 yards under favorable conditions. The Panther's gun mantlet was also vulnerable, though at closer distances. Only the Panther's severely sloped glacis plate remained genuinely difficult, requiring shots under 200 meters for reliable penetration. British crews applied barrel camouflage to disguise their Archers, painting 50% disruptive white patterns to convince Germans they faced standard 75mm guns rather than the lethal 17-pounder, the identical deception employed on Sherman Fireflies. By the time German crews realized their mistake, their tank was already burning. How did the Archer compare against rival designs? The German Jagdpanzer IV with its long 75mm gun weighed around 24 tons and carried up to 80mm of sloped frontal armor. It offered better protection and mounted a capable gun, but the Archer's 17-pounder surpassed it in raw penetrating power. This represented the intentional compromise, protection sacrificed for firepower and concealment. The American M10 Wolverine weighed nearly 30 tons, achieved 88mm of penetration with its 3-inch gun, and featured a fully rotating turret. The Archer significantly outgunned it but lacked the tactical flexibility. In a direct engagement, the M10 held advantages. In an ambush scenario, the Archer was superior. Here's the extraordinary detail. According to period accounts, some British artillery crews actually preferred their Archers over the American-made M10 Achilles they received. Through Lend-Lease, the shoot-and-scoot capability that seemed so absurd on paper proved devastatingly effective in proper tactical situations. The Archer's service extended well beyond 1945. Egypt purchased 200 ex-British Archers. Following the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, during the 1956 Suez Crisis, Egyptian crews fielded Archers against Israeli armor. Jordan received 36 vehicles for their Arab Legion in 1952. The design that British artillery officers had criticized in 1943 was still seeing combat 13 years later. 655 built, service spanning over a decade, exported to 3 nations. This backwards-looking vehicle that confused everyone upon first sight proved exactly what British engineering could accomplish when conventional thinking was abandoned. The Archer demonstrates a fundamental truth about military technology extending far beyond the Second World War. The optimal solution isn't always the obvious one. Sometimes you must turn the entire concept around and examine it from a completely different perspective. Vickers Armstrong confronted an impossible engineering challenge. The gun was too large, the chassis was too small, and the conventional approach would never succeed. So they constructed something that appeared wrong to everyone who saw it. And it outperformed the alternatives that looked correct. The Americans built the M10 with a proper rotating turret. The Germans built the Jagdpanzer with thick frontal armor. Both designs made perfect sense theoretically. Both looked like proper tank destroyers should look. Yet neither could match the 17-pounder's killing power combined with the Archer's ability to disappear after each shot. That's British engineering in essence. Not elegant, not beautiful, not what anyone expected, but devastatingly effective when it mattered most. The 17-pounder that killed Tigers and Panthers, mounted backwards on an obsolete chassis, driven into battle by crews who learned to love the strangest tank destroyer of the war,